Do you know, Brian, is Alder Moore in the waiting room or?
No, she's trying to get in. She was having some computer problems, so we can get started and we'll let her in when she's back in. So
Okay.
we're good to go live right now.
All right, I would like to call to order the Tuesday, January 19th meeting of the Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Wood,
Here.
Alder Kerr,
Here.
Alder Thomas,
Here.
Alder Groupie,
Here.
Alder Goforth,
Present.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To
to the flag of the United States of America,
the
republic
for
for which it stands,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the January 4th meeting?
Move
So
approval.
moved.
I'll second.
Any changes or additions, corrections or additions? Joan, I just had one thing on page 2 under the discussion of recording meetings, on the second page of the minutes anyway. I said I stated this is a good time to try this and see what kind of responses received from committees. I think what I said was from the community rather than from committees. Anything else? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item is we have an appearance tonight. State Senator Melissa Agard, who is our new state senator, taking Mark Miller's place. Welcome and congratulations on your election.
Thank you
She
so much.
has to speak with us to introduce herself and give us a little update on what's happening at the Capitol. So,
Absolutely. I appreciate having just a few moments of your time tonight. I know that you're very busy and that all the good work that local government does is so very, very important, especially with everything that's been happening at the state level and certainly at the national level. I am very much looking forward to tomorrow and have a candle lit for the new beginnings for our nation. I really just wanted to introduce myself to you all. And to make sure that you know that myself and my staff are available to you in any way that would be of use to you and for your community. With me tonight on this Zoom call is Megan Whitman, and Megan was hired in my office to do community outreach. So she's really the person who's going to be side by side with me throughout the district. Please see us as resources for the work that you are doing. If there is anything that we can do utilizing the legislative drafting attorneys or the research attorneys to support the work of Monona, please know that that is something that we are happy to work with. I know that Senator Miller was always right there for you as a neighbor and a real champion of the city of Monona, and that you were served very well by him for his years in office. And I am hopeful that you will see me as a strong partner and a tenacious ally for everything that is good about your community. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Really, I know that that your time is tight. I'm going to put my legislative email address in the chat, and at any point in time that you want to get a hold of Megan or I, you can do that. And it looks like I can only email to Brian. So, Brian, you'll have to share it with other people.
does anybody have any questions? I have one. I know that the assembly, I think I heard gavelled in and then gavelled out right away this afternoon or earlier today. Do you know if anything is going to happen with the governor's COVID plan, or is there any plan to take up some discussion of?
Yeah, so that is a very good question. The Assembly took up the bill AB1 in the Assembly that was the Republican Assembly member version of the COVID plan, and they had a public hearing and a final floor vote on that. And then the Senate amended that. It came to the Senate, and a Senate committee amended that bill. And we voted on it as well last week, a different version. So we're waiting to see what it is that the Assembly ends up doing. The version that we voted on in the Senate was much closer to Governor Evers' bill. Senator LeMahieu actually worked with the governor to amend the Assembly bill, so that it was palatable to all members of the Assembly, or all members of the Senate, as well as to the governor. The governor supported that. So certainly we know that there is a lot more work to do, but this was a step in the right direction. And I'm hopeful that my colleagues are committed to continuing to move forward with more COVID legislation.
So they are at least talking.
I don't know what Robin is doing, what Speaker Voss is doing, but certainly Senator LeMahieu and the governor are speaking, which is a good sign.
That's positive. Yeah.
And we will be receiving the governor's budget before the end of the month. That's something that I think you all as local government officials will look forward to being able to see. I also know that there is a commitment from our federal delegation and from Biden and his administration to provide more support for local government. So hopefully we'll be able to see the direct impacts of that money as well. Certainly, this is a time of a lot of transition, so I don't have a ton of information to be able to share with you on that. But my office will be holding a virtual listening session after the budget is released on Wednesday, February 3rd at 4:30 p.m. And we will be mailing out postcards to about 10,000 folks within the district. We can't afford to mail them out to everyone, but also providing the information to all the local newspapers, as well as advertising on social media. And hopefully we get a good turnout and have had the ability to dissect and understand the budget a little bit more at that point in time. So if that is a day that is available to you, I would encourage you to join us on Wednesday, February 3rd at 4:30. It is a Zoom event. And I'm happy to provide that information to you all if there is a way for you to elevate that message out to your community, that invitation out to the people of the city of Monona.
Sure, that'd be great. Why don't you send it to Brian and he can send it on to the rest of us and we can post it wherever. But we'd appreciate
Okay,
that.
I will. It's a registration, so I have a registration link, and then people will sign up and we'll send the Zoom link out to them. So I'll type the registration information in to the chat area as well.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Anyone else have any questions? No, well, we thank you. I think it's good for everyone to put a name with the face, and nice to have you come and speak with us, and please feel free to come back anytime. We're always up for appearances from our state officials, so that'd be great.
And please feel free to invite me back at any point that it makes sense for you all as well.
Okay, will do. Thanks. All right, well, we move on in our agenda then. There is no public hearing. There is no consent agenda. Moving on to council action items. Under unfinished business, we have one item, 1A, consideration of resolution 21-1-2458, authorizing staff to execute professional service contracts for National Register nominations. And this is put forth by the Landmarks Commission. Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion. Doug, were you going to talk about this?
I can talk about it
Anything to
briefly.
add?
Yes, I can just add a couple points to what I mentioned at the first read. So two consultants were selected and recommended by the Landmarks Commission. The breakout would be one consultant to work on the two residential properties, with the other consultant working on the commercial property. The recommendation was made based upon interviews and affirmed by the commission at their October meeting. A total of 5 consultants had registered their interest with the state. When you receive the grant, you receive a number of consultants that would be interested in potentially bidding for the work. So the RFPs were sent to each of those, as well as posted more generally. And of those, we had responses from 4, 3 of which were interested. So we interviewed each of those 3. And Alder Goforth was a part of that, as was another Landmarks Commission member as well. and of that, the two were recommended. The recommendation should also help with breaking up the workload to allow us to meet I think it's late August, early September deadline. It's been slightly extended, but they're very comfortable with that deadline, think that it's still very manageable, but that was certainly part of the recommendation as well, was to keep that workload broken out. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? Alder Kur.
So I have a question about the commercial property that's being considered. My understanding is that the benefit for properties is that they get access to tax credits, but since the commercial property is not, it's a nonprofit, they're not paying the same taxes that a commercial property normally would. What's the benefit for them?
So there is, it's a reduced tax benefit, but there is a way to effectively sell those credits on a secondary market. So there is a degree of washout that there would be versus, if it was a for-profit organization, but there's a way for them to do that. And my understanding is one of the board members is very well versed in that. So they were quite familiar with that, and I think had sort of expressed that to the rest of the board members when they put this to a vote.
And then I think it'd be helpful just for the rest of the group to hear what are the constraints on the property once it's listed as the National Register?
So very few. Really, it just adds an additional level of review in terms of based upon if it's institutional property, if there's federal tax credit or federal funding that goes into a project. But the typical review, and just speaking in general terms here, would be that it would go to the State Historic Preservation Office. They would review any new product or project, also all the way through to maybe a request for demolition. So they would review that. It's typically up to a 90-day review period. It can often be quicker, and it's just in general terms here. But for the most part, it's just an additional review piece to that. But it is in addition to any local landmark that we have or designation. So all three of these are local landmarks as well. So they would be going through, the city process, as well as kind of the state or the federal with the tax credit or the National Register process. So it adds an additional layer, but it is designed not to be particularly burdensome. And that was something that was stressed sort of throughout the process with those that were interested, that it is an additional piece, but it doesn't, impinge upon property rights or anything like that. It still allows projects to go through just with that degree of review.
Didn't realize that the commercial property was locally landmarked. Did that happen recently?
I believe it was locally landmarked. I may have misspoken. If the restore property, I would have to double check that, but I know both residential certainly are. I couldn't speak to, I guess, if restore is or isn't, but two of the three at least are.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Alder Moore.
Yeah, just as kind of a follow-up from Alder Kur's question. I'm also aware that as a nonprofit organization, Restore has been challenged to maintain their property. In fact, I've facilitated numerous conversations in the parking lot and elsewhere with nearby neighbors in that regard. And I'm sympathetic to that. It's not that we all don't love Restore and what they stand for and what they do, but it has been a bit of a challenge. And so I'm wondering if I know certainly our city landmark status requires a property owner to maintain their property at a certain level. They're not allowed to let it fall down, if you will, too far down. And I'm wondering at a national level, again, not unrelated to what Alder Kur is referring to, but if that would mean that Restore would be required to maintain it at a higher level than perhaps even it is now.
I wouldn't say that there are any additional requirements. It's more the National Register review process would be for additions or for changes rather than for more general maintenance. My understanding is that more of the maintenance and the general upkeep, parking lot area, things like that would be more dealt with at the local level, the local ordinance enforcement and things like that. It's not my understanding that National Register would put any additional upkeep requirements upon them.
City Planner Palmer is correct. The National Register standards really have to do with additions or substantial modifications to the exterior of the structure. If that is the case, then that property is governed under some standards that are set forth by the Secretary of the Interior. And there is a special set of standards that one has to meet for that. But some of the things that you're talking about are more site-driven. Those would not fall under the jurisdiction of the National Register.
Thank you.
I'm just looking at an article from 2016 when we reapproved the landmarks, and I don't see that store listed on this, but it's an article, so there might be something more on the city website. Alderwood, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just wanted to hear about the process for how we got down, how these three were selected.
Absolutely. So there were a total of 15 that were in the report itself, as well as the Nichols School was deemed previously eligible, so it was not included specifically in the report. I think it actually happened when Monona Drive reconstruction took place. So there were a total of 16 properties that were deemed eligible and that could have been a part of this process. So once the grant funding was secured, we wrote to each of the property owners, and there was sort of this continual dialogue that took place. It culminated in a last summer, late July, there was an event that was held, a Zoom event that was held in conjunction with the Historic Preservation Office. And it was really a sort of National Register 101. So an opportunity for them to ask questions, to better understand this. And it was really with the goal of us trying to get a list of those that are interested. The will of the commission all along had been that this be sort of the first step in getting properties on the National Register within the community, and to do it in sort of, a cordial way and, with property owner support. So throughout this, we were doing that. And the first step was to get, their interest, to include them in the RFP. That was sort of the first section. And then the second was from there, if they were, keen to proceed. We recognized that the people, particularly businesses, wanted to check implications and things like that of being on the National Register. So I think the RFP went out with 6 properties included, which would have been pretty close with the funding that was secured. It was about what, the maximum number. But it was just how it happened that there were only 6. And then going from the RFP to the final approval from the property owner, it went down to 3. So there had been discussion, very preliminary discussion, that if there was, if demand outstripped supply of the funding, there would need to be, sort of an evaluation of the properties and maybe some sort of, grading or ranking as to who may secure that funding. But that was not the case. Just the level of interest was small enough that the funding covered those that were looking to proceed.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other go forth?
I just wanted to add a couple of things. If you wanted to hear more about the selling of the tax credits, that discussion was had at length at one of the Monona Grove School District meetings. It was the second one. I was trying to look up the date. I believe it was early December. Does that sound right, Doug?
It does, yes.
Yeah, I was thinking December 7th or 8th. And our consultant talked about that at length, and it's a really interesting process. And then I also just wanted to acknowledge Doug's work on this. He has done a lot of work on this, and really appreciate all your time and effort you've put in, Doug. You've done a great job with it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, then all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to new business. Item 2A, consideration of ordinance 1-21-737, updating the fees, fines, and penalties schedule put forth by the city administrator.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Included in your packet is our annual fee and fine schedule. We've highlighted in yellow on the electronic version, grayed on a printed paper copy version, the items that have changed from the prior year. The main areas for change are on page 56 of your packet, which is the ambulance transportation fee. And I'll ask Chief McMullen to step in and talk about that in just a moment. And then there are some changes related to some park and rec programming, specifically at the below deck skating rink, and then with some of our rentals for facilities. And Park and Rec Director Jake Anderson is here as well, if you've got questions about that. So I'll turn it over to Jerry just to give a quick overview of the changes for ambulance transportation fee.
Good evening, everyone. Like I said in my earlier meeting, hopefully my microphone works tonight. It wasn't working the greatest at the last meeting. So the fee schedule we put forth to the Public Safety Committee meeting end of last month. What I did is I updated the schedule to reflect current billing practices. So what was in the ordinance when I started was a simple resident, non-resident fee schedule. What Medicare and Medicaid and the insurance companies actually do is break out what we do by level. And we're able to get compensated based on level. So you'll see there's a BLS rate, there's an ALS 1 and an ALS 2 rate. There's actually a couple more beyond that, but it's things that we don't do with Monona Fire and EMS. So BLS rate is your simple basic EMS call. I left that rate the same as what was already approved in the ordinance previous to me. The ALS 1 rate is your, if we do any type of advanced skill, if we start an IV, we do cardiac monitoring, anything like that, that bumps our rate up to an ALS 1 rate for both insurance and Medicare and Medicaid. Any type of major call, cardiac arrest, anything where we give more than 3 different medications bumps it up to an ALS 2 rate. And that's, again, a higher rate based on what the insurance companies will pay and what Medicare and Medicaid will reimburse us for. So Medicare and Medicaid do not reimburse us for that total amount, but that amount is what the insurance companies will pay. They have quite a reduction on Medicare and Medicaid rates, but they do recognize those different levels of care based on transport. So that's why there's multiple layers now where there wasn't before. It reflects current billing practice. And the same thing with on-scene care. If we provide care, there is a fee for that. Medicare and Medicaid generally will not pay unless we transport. Something that I mentioned to Public Safety and to the Finance Committee earlier this evening. Medicare and Medicaid look at us as transport agents. We are not healthcare providers. So the federal government looks at us as people to transport sick people to the hospital. So if there's no transport, Medicare and Medicaid will not pay. So that's why there's a whole breakout of different layers. Allows us to maximize what we get back from the insurance companies is the big push of this. Roughly 30% of our patients are on private insurance. The low 50s are Medicare and Medicaid patients, and the remainder are private pay, the folks that don't have insurance or Medicare or Medicaid, either through the state or the federal level. So that's hopefully a clear enough explanation for why I broke them out into the separate areas. I also took the rate from the high to the low, and I have a survey that was provided to Public Safety that shows where we sit in relation to other agencies around the county and the state. My goal is to aim for the middle of that. We don't want to be the highest. We don't want to be the lowest. We want to be right in the middle of the curve, which is where we're at. That's for all of our supplies, the auction we give, to the mileage that we charge, to the rates for transport. All of that, we're right in the middle of the curve. I'm willing to share that to anybody that would like to see it. Be more than happy to email it out to anybody that would like to work through the pages of stuff. Again, I try to be as transparent as possible. So, but that should explain the fees for the ambulance transport and non-transport. Those were approved by Public Safety and Finance Committee earlier this evening.
Before we move on to Jake, does anyone have any questions for Chief McMullen? Alder Goforth and then Alder Thomas.
I was just wondering, for background information, when was the last time we updated this schedule?
I think we do it annually, don't we?
Yes,
The schedule is full, yes.
And the ordinance for transport fees was updated in October of 19.
Okay, thanks.
Alder Thomas?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Chief. Since Medicare sees you as a transport agency, if you use medicine or oxygen, will when you're transporting, will they pay for that?
No, they will not. What Medicare pays for is they have a drastically reduced rate based on what we charge. So we can charge, say, $2,000 for an ambulance transport. What they'll pay is a rate negotiated by the federal government, including a mileage rate, but they do not pay for supplies. So Medicare, Medicaid, we get a base rate negotiated by CMS and a negotiated mileage rate for loaded miles from the scene of the EMS call to the hospital. That's what the federal government will pay.
Thank you.
Alder Groupie, and then Alder Moore.
I just wanted to say, so I know that we reviewed and updated these fees in fall of 2019, as Jerry mentioned, and I'm sorry, Chief McMullen. I'll be formal. I can do it formally. But what I really appreciate, I just want to say, since my time on the Public Safety Committee, the way that you've broken down the transport rates with greater specificity into those multiple categories, I think is extremely useful. And I appreciate that you've taken the time to break those out so that our understanding is a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more comprehensive. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Alder Moore.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Chief McMullen, as long as we're going formal, did in fact, we did have a lengthy discussion about this at the public safety meeting, and he was asked for all the right reasons to unpack all the details in terms of the actual impact that this might have on individuals and their pocketbooks, not just on their insurance companies. Jerry, I'm wondering if you can, there I go, I'm going informal again. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, because we did spend a lot of time at public safety about it. And I know I actually felt a lot better once I heard that, about that, how it works from an individual standpoint.
Certainly. So I'll start with just a simple BLS call. Somebody who's fallen, who we respond to and we transport to the hospital because they've fallen, generally gets billed out as a BLS rate. So $1,000 for our residents. If that resident is on Medicare, Medicare will pay 80% of their negotiated rate. So if we bill $1,000, the Medicare rate is generally going to be about $290 is what they'll pay the service. What Medicare pays is 80% of that. So 80% of, say, $300 is what they'll pay. The other $100 and some dollars or $80 is billed to the patient. That's the 20% that they're required to pay as part of the Medicare coverage. Most of the folks we transport actually have supplemental plans, which will cover that. But if they don't, then the people who are transported are responsible for that 20%. Medicaid patients, there is no match. Medicaid says, well, this is what we'll pay, which is generally about $180 is the max that they'll pay for a transport, whether it's at the state or federal Medicaid level. And they pay for the entire thing. So the folks that are on Medicaid don't have a 20% match. They have a 0% match. We get about $180 out of a Medicaid transport. If they're covered under private insurance, the private insurance will pay the entire $1,000 minus whatever their deductible might be, along with mileage, supplies. I would say an average EMS call for a BLS rate with mileage, the BLS stuff that we perform is going to be about $1,300 when it adds in mileage. Private insurance will pay that. Medicare will pay $300 of that. The rest of that is written off. So there is no bill for the other $1,000 that goes to the resident that's on Medicare. They get billed for 20% of what Medicare will pay. The rest of that is written off at the billing company level. And Medicaid will pay 180 of the 1,300. The rest of it gets written off at the billing company level.
Alder Thomas.
What if I can't afford that 20% that Medicare requires that I pay?
The way we have it set up with our billing company is they can actually, as long as they call, the billing company is authorized to work with them to reduce that based on their income level. So that's nothing that actually gets even brought before us being the council or public safety. They're authorized to reduce it on a formula based on their income level. So if their only source of income is Social Security, as an example, as long as they call, LifeQuest is authorized to reduce that based on how they fit within the federal poverty level. So they can reduce that down to maybe 5% and then work out payments of $5 a month. Whatever works for the patient is what our goal is, especially with folks that either don't have insurance or have Medicare or Medicaid as their coverage.
Other questions? Jerry, I understand it correctly that up until now, we had just one fee for residents and another for non-residents. Is that correct?
Correct.
So this is much more, many different
Specific.
levels. So people probably aren't being charged as much for some things as they were before, I assume, depending on
Correct.
the supplies you needed or whatever. Alder Thomas?
Yeah, I think the point that Alder Moore and at public safety that we all talk about and that we want you to know is that we believe that the service and paying for the service, that we're very compassionate with people and with their ability to pay. And nobody, I mean, we really care very much about that, not making someone go broke or go without something to pay for it. And that there is a lot of consideration given to the ability to pay for people with lower incomes.
I will say again, the billing company is authorized to be very forgiving for folks, especially if folks of lower socioeconomic status. The big thing is they have to call. If they call and talk to them, they're authorized to do a lot to help reduce that bill if they're unable to pay it. If it goes beyond what they're authorized to do, they'll reach out to myself, and then we can actually get it onto the Public Safety Committee meeting and authorize more of an actual write-off. If they're truly unable to pay, we'd much rather people feel comfortable calling and getting the help they need than trying to bill somebody for something they can't pay.
Anyone else? Alder Coor.
How do we communicate that to bill payers? Is that in the literature that they get about their bill? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
And if any of the council would like, I can actually provide you with what gets sent. I can give you a draft copy of what they actually send. I'm happy to share that. It was part of their proposal. LifeQuest is very good at what they do with that. So if anybody ever has a question for that, I'm happy to share.
Anyone else? All right, well then let's move on to Mr. Anderson. The Park and Rec fees begin on page 69 in your packet. Hi, Jake.
Good evening. Sorry, I didn't realize I was talking about our fees, but I don't really have much to add other than we deleted the rental fees for the community center. That was approved in the 2021 operating budget not to do rentals at the community center, and then some price adjustments for admissions and rentals at Monona Bank River Rink. I believe everything else is pretty much the same from park shelter rentals and then outdoor pool admissions for this year.
Jake, I just had a question. I knew that we were no longer going to, and this is all assuming COVID ends at some point. I knew that we weren't going to be doing the events like on the weekend at the community center, but are we no longer going to be renting room space, say for an evening Girl Scout meeting or anything like that, or after this year?
No, we would be absent COVID restrictions. Those are fee waiver groups, so there wouldn't be
Okay.
charges associated with them, with
Okay.
the Monona-based groups.
Okay. Anyone have any questions about the Park and Rec fees? Alder Coor.
I just wanted to say thanks to Jake for reducing a lot of the fees for the river rink. I think that's a great way to make sure that the rink's accessible to all of our community. I also want to put a shout out for the lagoon and the work that your staff does to maintain the lagoon, because that's a free service. So if you're not able to afford the river rink, the lagoon's available as long as the conditions are right. I brought my daughter out there 2 weeks ago and it was her first time on ice, and thankfully she didn't kill us or herself. So we're in good shape. So thanks a lot, Jake.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, anything else about the fee schedule in general, unrelated to Park and Rec? All right, we will move on then to consideration, next item C, consideration of resolution 21-1-2461, approving a final design for Stonebridge Park improvements put forth by the Park and Rec Board, and this is starred for immediate approval.
Madam Mayor, sorry, we missed item B. 2B, Resolution 2460.
I'm sorry, I turned the page too quickly. All right, item 2B, consideration of Resolution 21-1-2460, amending the 2021 capital budget for the purchase of fire and EMS equipment put forth by the fire chief. I'm sorry, Kathy, did you have a question?
You're on mute, Kathy.
That's the latest phrase these days. Chief, did you want us to take this up tonight so you can get the equipment, or is there no rush on it?
I apologize. I should have asked for it to be for immediate action. Yes, if I can get it taken care of tonight, that'd be appreciated.
I move to suspend the rules and take this item out of order.
A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Move approval.
Second.
Chief McMullen.
Good evening again. One of the first things I did when I started here was start looking at what we have for gear for our members. We basically had 25 plus sets of gears that were out of date. Some of them so bad that the dates are actually illegible on them. One of the things that we're working with right now, Madison College, which is where we get all of our training for our firefighters and our EMTs, 5 years ago put out notice that they would stop accepting students unless they were in gear that was NFPA compliant. NFPA compliant means it's within 10 years of manufacturer's date, starting from the helmet down to the boots. So in doing the gear inventory and finding we were so short, I've got a full list of everybody now from their helmets down to their boots. I appreciate the council's approval of the $20,000 for turnout gear that we did get for 21. And going through what we had in the capital budget on both sides, both fire and ambulance, the AED replacement project, which was approved for $15,000, is not necessary. The AEDs that we have are sufficient. They are updatable. When the AHA does update their guidelines, we can update them in-house. So anything we would buy would be the exact same as what we have now. So there's no need for that. So what I asked the council of tonight is to give me the ability to buy some more turnout gear to make up for what we're short. The town of Madison purchases helped cover a lot of our new folks. We have currently 9 full sets of turnout gear that expire within the next 10 or 11 months. And that's for folks that are active in the department, not necessarily new folks, but folks that are actively firefighting for us. That includes helmets and boots. The other side of this that I ran into is we have a couple of folks that only provide EMS services for us and not fire services. What I found is they aren't issued anything. They get a sweatshirt and no gear at all. So they're at the same car accidents, car fires, structure fires, EMS calls that my full-time staff and my volunteers are that have gear, but they have nothing. So I currently have 2 EMS only folks that this will also be used to help purchase gear for them. It is cheaper than regular turnout gear, but they still need something. They do need a helmet, they need gloves, they need boots. What I did on my end to help with this is I reached out to 4 different gear vendors instead of the one we've been using traditionally. Gave them the spec that we've had over the last couple of years, asked for their best price. We've managed to cut about $600 off per set to bring the cost down for the department and for the city. So I'm asking for about $11,500 for the boots, the helmets, the additional gear that I need to buy. It should purchase 10 sets of full turnout gear and 2 sets of EMS only gear, along with the helmets and boots that are necessary. The other $3,500 as part of the AED project, I'd like to move up the tablet replacement that we have scheduled for 2022. The reason for that is when I put Medic 62 in service, one of the things that I noticed, we have 2 patient care tablets, which is what we use to enter our data for the calls that we go on. Medic 60's tablet has been down twice this year, in 2020, forgive me, last year. When that's down and in for service, we only have 1, which means I can't put that second ambulance in service if I don't have a tablet to do patient care. So I'd like to move that up to the current year, remove it from the 22 budget, make it in the 21 budget as the other $3,500 of the allocated money. For those that aren't aware, we also purchased the ice rescue equipment that is slated for 22 out of donation money between Town of Madison's donation and some donation money we had in the trust fund. So that'll be coming off the 22 budget as well. There's also the defibrillator replacement that was next year that's also coming off the capital budget because of EMS fund money that bought the defibrillator from the Town of Madison. So we're trying to reduce our impact on the capital budget, not just this year, but also next year. So that's my spiel for the allocation money. I'm more than happy to answer questions if anybody has them.
So we're basically reallocating money that we had already allocated for another project for the department. Alder Groupie?
Yes.
Look, I know I'm already on record as like a total Jerry stan, but I just want to say again, this really represents some really incredible resourcefulness and I think grit in tracking down all of these different solutions and different purveyors of the gear. I think it's very essential to the safety and the health of our department. And I just really appreciate it. So thanks again. Another awesome job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And one of the things that I wanted to be careful of with this is making sure we don't run into the same issue in 10 years, that we have all this gear that has to be replaced again. So with us replacing what we're doing now, it spaces it out enough that we're going to be able to do the 5 or 6 sets going forward. So next year's capital budget may see a slight increase in what I ask for gear. It may end up being 7 sets instead of 5 or 6. But then going forward, based on what I've got on record, we should be down to 5 or 6 sets a year, which will level it out to where it should be. So even in 10 years, I've already forecasted out 15. Again, if anybody would like to see my numbers, I'm happy to share them. But I forecasted out 15 years at this point to make sure we're leveled out to no more than 5 or 6 sets per year going forward after this year and next year.
Any other questions? Alder Moore?
Yeah, I just want to say I certainly concur with Alder Groupie, and thank you again, Jerry, for being so resourceful and just going through all this stuff. And I guess the second thing I would say is don't let it go to your head.
I'll say all I'll say on that is I smile every morning coming into work, and I'm having a great time.
Well, we hope you keep smiling. Anything we can do to help keep you smiling is just fine. That's great. Thank you.
Anyone else? As I said at Finance and Personnel, I think both Jerry and Chief Eckloff earlier this year have done a great job in getting some of this equipment from the Town of Madison. And we've paid for some of it, but we've paid much less than we would have paid to buy new. And what we bought was practically new in a lot of cases. So it's really been a huge help to the capital budget. Alder Thomas, you're on mute.
I was going to say, lest anyone wonder how we get so much done, I called yesterday to the fire department and there he was working away.
Yep.
On what was a day off, so.
He spent yesterday driving around picking up food barrels. So, anyone else? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Mayor, we probably should do a roll call because it's an amendment to a budget.
Oh, okay, all right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Goforth,
Aye.
Alder Wood,
Aye.
Alder Coor,
Aye.
Alder Thomas,
Aye.
Alder Groupie,
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Next item, consideration of resolution 21-1-2461, approving a final design for Stonebridge Park improvements put forth by the Parks and Rec Board, and this is starred for immediate approval. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Jake?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Tonight we've got Zach Simpson is in attendance. He's a project manager for Strand and Associates, was the lead project designer on Stonebridge. Zach was also a major project manager for Grand Crossing Park. So he's got lots of experience with Monona and helping design some of our most recent park facilities. This final design has been a lot of work integrating stormwater improvements and park design and trying to complement the request from Landmarks Commission with the pagoda and addressing some of the park goals and accessibility and improving the shoreline. So I think, Brian, if you can give control to Zach, or he can request control, and have Zach kind of walk you through this design. This was unanimously recommended for approval at the January 12th Parks Board meeting.
Jake, before we do that, do you want to just address why this is started for immediate approval?
Sure. So because it's a joint stormwater parks project and getting council approvals, this needs to go to the paper in the January 28th edition. I believe the January 28th, February 4th, with the bid opening of February 18th. That would align with the first meeting in March for council, and then Public Works Committee and Parks Board that following week to be able to fit in with a construction timetable.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Simpson, if you'd like to go ahead with your presentation.
Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. Brian, I don't know if, can I share my screen? Oh, here we go.
Be able to know. Yep.
Can you guys see that?
No.
How about now?
Now again.
Yep.
All right, so this, as Jake mentioned, we've been working on this park for several months. We're working in tandem with both the Park and Rec Department, which is obviously Jake, as well as Public Works with Dan and Brad. And there's kind of, as Jake mentioned, a couple goals in mind here. One is on the park side, accessibility to the lake, as well as the pagoda, and kind of improving the maintainability of the pagoda and the viewing of the pagoda. And then on the Public Works side, improving stormwater management in this drainage basin. So Public Works has pursued a couple of grants to install an underground stormwater detention basin, which is going to be located in the middle of the park. And as most of you probably know, right now, the stormwater just basically outfalls at the upper end of the park and surface drains down to the lake. So there's some issues with just the existing overland flow route for those significant stormwater events. So what we've done is, starting from the street level up at Winnequa, we've established a concrete trail 6 feet wide that will run at 5% to meet ADA requirements from the top of the park all the way down to a dock abutment at the water's edge at the lower end, which is going to be located down here. So really improving accessibility for everyone. And at this pagoda, we've kind of opened that area up. There's like an aggregate buffer around the base of the pagoda, and then stepped stone walls at a 1-to-1 slope behind and around the pagoda. So trying to kind of open up the grade around that to some extent. I mentioned the stormwater treatment device. It's going to be located right here. You can kind of see the outline of it. Hopefully you can see my cursor. And then the pipe work coming from a high capacity inlet at Winnequa into the structure, and then continuing down to the water at an outfall right next to the dock abutment. Some other things to point out, at the upper end, there's bike rack. There's a couple bench locations closer to the water. There will be bollard lighting starting at the top. I believe there are 7 bollards as you make your way down to the water. And then just, new landscaping throughout. We are going to lose some trees, but for the most part, they will be replaced, and along with some other landscaping. You can kind of see this is the landscape. I'm not sure if you want to talk about the trees or if that's significant or not, but guess one other thing to mention is there was some interest in providing access to the lake both during the summer months and the winter months, because there's it's anticipated that this may be used for ice fishermen to access the lake. We also wanted to provide a kind of an at-grade access for paddle users, so kayakers and canoeists. I think I hit everything, Jake. Is there anything I missed?
The honeycomb representation to get to this stormwater box.
Yeah, so this honeycomb hatch area is basically just reinforced turf. It's grass pavers, but in order for Public Works to get in here and clean out this underground detention facility, we wanted to provide something that wasn't going to get destroyed and have to be reestablished every time they go in there. So trying to reinforce this, it'll just look like normal grass, but should require less maintenance in the long term.
And this will also help our phosphorus reduction requirement. Is that correct? The stormwater improvement?
That is correct, Mayor. Yep. So this is a stormwater quality basin. All the low flows, so the less significant storm events will be, all that water will be diverted into this underground device. When you see a significant flow, there's actually a bypass so that, for example, the 100-year would basically bleed off some water into this, but it would bypass this because we don't want to be treating those larger events. So it's intended to function in pretty much any storm scenario. I guess one other thing to mention, we size these things for 100-year, but lately it seems like every year we're getting 100-year, so it's only a matter of time before those kind of parameters change. So there is still an overland flow route through the park that starts up here at this high capacity inlet, and there's sort of an established route of flow that goes through here, and we try to pick it up with some intermittent open grates in here. So that was thought about, but the intent is to basically keep all of the storms inside a pipe and underground, so we don't have issues with washing the park out.
Alder Moore.
Yeah, so Zach, thanks very much, and Jake, you as well. I really appreciate. I know this has been designed, redesigned, and redesigned multiple times. So if you could just go back to that 100-year storm question, because it was actually a question I was going to raise, which is that, I know when we did the riverfront, we had to redo several times over because we were trying to maximize, the exposure there and not just think of it as 100 years, since we are having those more frequently. And so in your comments, Zach, were you saying that this is really designed for more than 100 years, or that or have we sufficiently shored up, all puns intended, the shoreline, as well as whatever we can do in the park to make it, frankly, maybe not a 500-year, but better than 100?
Well, maybe I shouldn't have misspoken. It's that the 100-year stays inside the pipe, so is underground.
Okay.
My point was that we're getting to a point where the 100 years kind of undefinable, and at some point down the road, that design guidance is going to change. It seems like every year the Madison Lakes are getting up to the 100-year for quite a period of time now. So
right.
That was my point. It wasn't that this is designed necessarily for more than a 100-year event, but we did do some things to kind of bolster the site in case there is additional overland flow beyond the 100-year.
I believe Alder Moore, John Linhart, who was doing the majority of the stormwater design on this, that's the rationale behind that supersized inlet on the road Originally, we had just kind of a double grate, and then the upsizing of the pipe, Zach, I believe is a 36-inch pipe from the road down to the stormwater collector.
Yeah, so we've, right. I mean, it's still, Jake, at the end of the day, the pipes and everything are still sized for the 100-year event. So I think what Nancy was asking is if it's really designed for more than that or not. And I mean, yes, in some regard, the site is set up for more than that, but the underground improvements are designed for specifically to convey a 100-year event.
And are you saying then, sorry, as a follow-up, are you
Does that
saying,
answer your question?
yeah, are you saying that because the guidance has not yet changed, that
Right.
it's hard to know, you know, in terms of construction and guidance in terms of the overall design, the best way to accommodate a more than 100-year? I mean, I'm just saying that this seems to me if especially as you said, if we're at the 100-year level more often than not, and in the summers now for a good part of the summer,
Yeah.
then you know, I'm just concerned that we're designing for 100-year and a year from now or 2 years from now, we're going to get new guidance, and what we've done has to be redone, if you will. Is that possible?
I would not say that, but I guess the point is that we have to use the current criteria that's published for our design. So, you know, it's hard to say. We can't predict the future, right? But I would anticipate at some point that guidance is going to change just based on the frequency of 100-year events that we've had over the past 4 or 5 years.
Right. And so what you're saying is you can't design differently because you have to go by what the guidance is there now. Like you would be kind of.
Right.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Right. But with that said, we did do some things to kind of improve the site and anticipate that if there was something beyond that, that there's a route for it that shouldn't impact our improvements that are proposed here.
Thank you.
Does anyone have other questions? I can't see everyone on the screen, so if you want to go.
I do, Mayor. It's Mayor. I do.
Okay,
Go for it. Zach, can you talk to me about the improvements? So I live really close to this park, and when it's a rain event, it's like a class 3 rapids through the middle of this park. And so if the underground pipe is not sufficient, and I'm just concerned about that walkway that we're investing a lot in, the chances of that being washed out. So you pointed out kind of in the second S curve, there's a circle, and you pointed to that, and you said it sounded like it was going to be a drain there, or what are the other precautions you're implementing to help prevent that from washing out?
I can talk through that. So I switched over to the grading plan. Can everybody see the grading plan that's up here?
Yeah.
So you can kind of see this ditch or this swale that my cursor is following through the site. We've placed another grate here downstream of this structure. So anything that would overtop up here at Winnequa at this high capacity inlet would flow down. It could potentially go in one of these grates in this structure. If it's so much flow that it bypasses this structure, it would get into this structure. And if it bypasses this, it's going to get into the lake. Okay. In addition to those structures that I just mentioned, this swale will be reestablished with probably TRM, so a more robust restoration method. It's basically just a double mat of EMAT to kind of reinforce this reestablished turf. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I'm wondering too, I think, weren't you at the first listening session? Or public input session, sorry, for the park?
Probably.
I think I saw you there. One of the comments that several people made was that the 6-foot walkway was too wide. They felt that that was overkill for the park. And the response was that it needed to be that wide so we could drive the trucks down to empty the underground stormwater, that big tank, I guess, or the cells. And so then I noticed though in the new rendering that octagonal kind of grass pavers or honeycomb grass pavers, as Jake referred to that. So is it possible, and I know this is already approved, I just didn't see any discussion about this at the parks meeting, to reduce the size of that walkway to 5 feet, like people wanted at the initial public input session? And has that been discussed?
So we did have this discussion in the past, as you mentioned. I think we had started at an 8-foot wide trail, and it was already reduced to 6, if I remember right. And the other, so the public works vehicle only needs to get to this structure, right?
Right.
But they need more like 10 feet. So that's why we're showing the honeycomb pattern here. That's for the grass pave. The additional, so the width all the way down to the water is actually so that this can be maintained and so that this future dock can be maintained.
Got it. And then I was struggling to see in the drawings what the launch looks like for people that have kayaks or canoes. Can you talk me through that? Because I couldn't see it in the rendering, what exactly that final decision looked like.
Yeah, so basically this is just an aggregate trail that goes to the water's edge. We can't, in discussions with DNR, without permitting this as an actual launch, we can't go below the ordinary high water mark. If you're familiar with this site though, the shoreline's actually pretty conducive to paddle craft.
Yep, it is.
So we're really just extending the shoreline up to this point, which is kind of.
Sorry, Zach.
So from a grading standpoint.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Is that better?
Yeah.
It's really just going to be a constant grade from this point down. I don't know the grade off the top of my head. I want to say it's probably 10% or so. But as you know, this is a pretty tight site.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of room to work with to get ADA 5% from the lake up to Winnequa. I think there's about 15 feet of vertical drop. So I can find out what this grade is, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. It sounds like it got worked out though, that it's a little more helpful than launching on the big limestone rocks that
Yeah, that was you're right. That was the concern, that there's kind of a stepped stone wall here, and we didn't want people trying to launch off of that.
Yeah.
So this is it's a finer aggregate, kind of like probably like a 3/4 inch aggregate.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have any questions? Again, I can't see everyone, so.
Alder Groupie, I just would
Okay.
like to make a comment if that's okay, Mayor.
Sure.
So we did discuss at this last park meeting that newly graded and more appropriate launch pad for paddlers and paddlecraft, which I appreciated because I know that Alder Moore and other constituents had expressed concern about that specifically. But I also just wanted to say thank you to you, Zach and Strand, Public Works, Landmarks, the planning team, and Parks especially, both Jake and the board, just for the I feel collaborative and comprehensive discussions and planning, meetings and input sessions that we had to try to solicit input and make this a plan that was appropriate for all. I've talked pretty fiercely about the necessity of the wide path before. That's something that I'm pretty committed to and grateful that we are providing for not just people who are differently abled, but, you know, people with strollers and other crafts who are trying to get down to the shore. So, sorry, I'm hearing myself in feedback, so I'm trying to like wait myself out. Anyway, all of this is to say is I really appreciate everyone's efforts, conversations, input, criticisms. All of it was very helpful and informative, and coming to this last final format and plan that Parks did approve last week. So I'm appreciative. I'm grateful. Thank you, everybody.
Anyone else? Alder Wood.
Well, I was going to say pretty much everything that Alder Groupie just said. So kudos to Jake and the consultants and the park board and the neighbors, Public Works. It's seems like for the time I've been on Parks Board, more often than not, Stonebridge Park seems like it was on the agenda. And I think we ended up with a lot better plan that of design than what we started out with in a number of ways. So,
Alder Moore.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks as well, but I also can't let Jake leave without also saying thanks for his electric blue headset.
I thought that was his natural glow.
Like I'm waiting for you to say, beat me up, Mary.
We're just gonna play Mario Kart after this. I'm borrowing from my 8-year-old son, and I like them. I may just keep them for myself.
Anyone else? Okay, there are no.
I just have one last comment. Yeah, thank you. I do think the design, it turned out better than when we started, that's for certain. I think I still struggle though in spending this kind of money at this time. So I am going to vote no on this, but just basically on a timing issue. I felt like we should have done the stormwater piece at this point. But I feel like we could have waited on our other pieces. Just really hard in a year when we had to pull $250,000 out of our fund balance, and just thinking about priorities and knowing that people are struggling paying their property taxes. And yeah.
If I could just explain, the reason I put both projects in the budget this year is because it made no sense to me to tear up the entire park, have to pay to put it back together, and then come back and tear it up again in a year or two to do the park project. So I think it would have cost us a lot more to do it that way. Alder Moore, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say, I think we're mixing a little bit of apples. Well, a couple of things. We're mixing. I appreciate Alder Goforth's struggle, but mixing apples and oranges. Number one, we've already approved this money. It's been approved in the capital budget. So
yeah,
we're not.
I didn't. I voted against it, but.
Right, but but the thing is that the money's already been approved. We're just approving the plan. We're not approving the finances. We've already approved the finances, right? It's already in the budget.
Correct.
One, and number two, taking money out of the fund balance, which is our reserved fund, to cover our operating expenses is an apple versus capital funding, which is where the money is coming from for this park. It's two different pots of money that aren't related to one another.
But it all does come from one source primarily. So I know the funding mechanism is different, but we do have a limited pool of funds to work with.
Alder Corr, did you have something?
My colleagues have covered it. I don't think we can beat a dead horse anymore.
Exactly.
Anyone else? All right, Joan, do we need a roll call for this? No? Okay, all in favor of approving the plan, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next, item D, consideration of resolution 21-1-2462, authorizing a letter of support for the Monona Grove School District Energy Innovation Grant application and Monona Grove High School Solar Project put forth by the Sustainability Committee. This is also starred for immediate approval due to a timing issue. So is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
1 second.
All in favor of taking out of order, say aye.
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 Is there a motion to approve?
So
I'll move
moved.
approval.
Second,
I'll second.
second out of that, Joan. Okay, Nancy, were you
Who
going?
was the second? I'm sorry.
Alder, go for
Alder,
it.
go
Which
forth.
I'm sorry, say again.
Alder, go forth.
Thank you so much.
Nancy, were you going to speak to
Yes.
this?
Yes, I was. Thank you for this resolution. So as you can see from the resolution, this resolution calls for essentially a letter of support and commitment from this council in support of an Office of Energy Independence grant that is being submitted by the school district in support of a solar installation on the high school. It's simply vocalizing our support for the school district's efforts. The school district being part of the community, I guess community component, if you will, of our commitment to 100% clean energy. For the kilowatt hour geeks out there, on this solar installation is going to be 674.7 kilowatt rooftop PV array, and it will actually be the largest array of a K through 12 school in the entire state of Wisconsin. So how's that for bragging rights? And it's the total project, just to give you an idea of the finances. The total project cost estimate is 1.2 million, and this grant is for 250,000. If the grant's received, there'll be positive cash flow in the very first year of operation. And the solar array that's being that has been proposed will provide 48% of the electrical energy at the high school. So it's an extraordinary lift, really exciting project. And again, we're just looking for a vote of approval for a letter to go along with the grant application, which is due on Friday.
Any discussion, questions, Alder Thomas?
I was just going to add, and I believe that they are going to utilize this for some teaching, some class environments.
They are indeed. They're going to be. They have set up a whole curriculum with the students at the high school, and so there's going to be obviously, help jettison our younger generation in a field which is obviously going to be extremely important moving forward. Already is and will continue to be. So yes, it's in the curriculum.
And I think they're also planning to use it as sort of a test case and possibly do something similar on some other school buildings if the funding and everything works out as planned.
Yeah.
Alder Groupie?
I just wanted to thank, I unfortunately missed last week's Sustainability Committee meeting, but I wanted to thank Alder Moore and the rest of the committee for expressing their support in this way for the project. This is one of several ways I feel like we're attempting to collaborate more ardently with the school district and especially students involved in alternative educational programs. And so I just think it's another way that the city is showing its support for the district and these very important sustainability measures and projects.
Thank you. Alder Goforth.
Yeah, I this is phenomenal, really exciting. I was part of the group that went on top of got to view the array on top of Madison College with the district. Super impressive. I really hope the district will offer a tour. It's really something else to be on top of there and see something like this. So really excited about this. Thanks to Sustainability Chair and Co-Chair and to the Sustainability Committee for their support on this.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. I assume no one opposed. Okay, final item, also started for immediate approval, again due to timing, consideration of resolution 21-1-2459, combining City of Monona voting wards for the spring primary on February 16th, 2021, put forth by the city clerk. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
Suspend the rules and take this item out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
I'll second.
Okay, the reason for this, of course, is COVID. You know, it's still raging, and this is a lower attended election. We still have a lot of absentee voting. So I don't think we're going to need 2 polling places for this election. I'm assuming, I haven't looked at the sample yet, but there may be only 1 office on the ballot. And so to keep us safe, this is what I feel we should do. And then in April, we'll go back to the 2 polling places because there will be a much higher attendance at that, participation at that election. But for this one, it just really doesn't make sense to expose more people to, contagion. So.
Any questions?
Yeah. Any questions?
And Joan, just in terms of the absentee ballot, I think some people that I've talked to anyway aren't aware that if just because they applied for a ballot last year for the August and November elections, they have to reapply this year unless they're considered indefinitely confined.
Right. It's been like that forever. That's not a change or anything. So yes, if you want to get ballots for an entire year, you do have to request it every year.
Okay. And you can go to what, My Vote?
My Vote Wisconsin, that's I'm sorry. myvote.wi.gov.
Yeah.
And you can sign up online. And if you have already provided photo ID, you don't have to do it again. And then, of course, the indefinitely confined, we will be following up with our overwhelming number of indefinitely confined voters just to make sure that everybody still wants to maintain their status in that way. But yes, when you have provided photo ID for an absentee ballot by mail, you only have to do it once. It doesn't cover you, of course, if you come in person. Every time you come in person, you have to show your ID, but by mail once.
And you can provide it digitally, right? If you.
Yes, on the website, you can upload it.
So that counts as well if you've already done that, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, if we've got that, they're now maintained on the actual statewide voter registration system. We just have to print out every paper copy of everything, and now it is maintained on the system. So if they've provided it digitally, it remains there.
Okay. Any further questions about this? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Joan. That was the last item. We'll move on to reports, and I'm going to start the reports this time, partly because Alder Moore is going to follow me with part of what I'm going to say. I've got a couple things to announce tonight. First of all, a communications update. I have been working with Brian and staff now, talking about for a couple of months on a monthly e-newsletter, which we hope to start distributing within the next month. As you know, we've wanted to do more to increase communication with residents for a long time. And now that we've got some additional bandwidth in the department, in the community media department, that allows us to do that. We've got some staff who have some experience in that. And so we'll be hoping to get that up within the next month or so. I have a Nehemiah update. Brian and I have been working with Nehemiah on several different items that will be coming to fruition within the next month. The first, which is you're aware, the cultural engagement session for staff and council next Monday from 2 to 4. He and I will be participating in an executive training session on the 27th with Dr. G. We will be releasing a citywide survey within the next few days regarding what residents would like to see in a new police chief. And Karen Reese of Nehemiah has provided input to staff and the Police and Fire Commission regarding some of the questions in the survey. So look for that. Brian is going to be sending out an email about that, and we'd appreciate if all of you would share it on social media, and we'll also be sharing it in a variety of ways. And some of the departments will be sharing it on their websites as well. And finally, there's a community listening session scheduled for February 9th, also focused on community input regarding the new police chief. and Nehemiah will be facilitating that. We'll be putting out an announcement about that within the next day or so, and Brian will also send you the information about that. So
just one item on that community listening session. That's kind of a joint session co-hosted by the Police and Fire Commission, GovHR, which is the consultant that's helping us with the police chief search, and Nehemiah will also be participating in that as well. So kind of a triple hosted event.
So we look forward to input from as many people as are interested. Okay, that takes care of those items. And then finally, San Damiano, I just wanted to give a little update. I did speak with the Landmarks Commission, who had some questions about the current status last week. And I'm just going to give you folks the same update. Really, nothing has changed from what we've been saying for the past month or two in terms of the city's part on this. Between now and June 1st, we're focused on raising as much money as we can to help defray the cost of the purchase to Monona taxpayers. I can't go into a lot of detail about contacts that the Friends of San Damiano are making, because those are confidential. This type of fundraising pretty much requires that. But at some point after we take title to the property, we'll start a master planning process where everyone who's interested will be asked to give their input, including the Landmarks Commission and any resident of Monona who's interested. It's going to be the planning process, from discussions Jake and I have, could go anywhere from 8 to 15 months for a project this size. So it's going to take a while. I see this, as I've said before, as a long-term project. There's no need to rush. We want to do it right. At the beginning, we're probably just going to put out some picnic tables and benches and maybe design a few paths through the woods and leave it at that until we conduct the master planning process. So we're completely focused on the fundraising for the purchase between now and June. Just to be clear, the Friends are not buying the property. Any money raised will go to the city for the purchase. And Friends fundraising after June 1st will go to the master plan, the ongoing operating expenses, any capital expenses, things like doing an assessment of the condition of the house, that kind of thing. City is applying for various grants, definitely Knowles Nelson and federal law con grants, which are both administered through the Department of Natural Resources. And once we complete the purchase, it will be open to the public, basically as a park. The house will be secured and not open to the public at this point. It is not in any shape to be letting lots of people in. I have included some money, as you know, in the capital budget this year for tree inventory, archaeological survey, cleanup of the property if needed. And just to be clear, there are no conceptual plans right now. There are no plans in the works at all. It will depend on the outcome of the master planning process, which, as I said, will be very community driven. And there's no easement agreement with the county at this point. We are going to be negotiating that over the next month or two. The council, that will eventually come to council for approval. I think that covers about everything. And I'm going to turn it over to Nancy, who can update us on Friends and some things that they have.
Sure, thank you. So first of all, for those people that may not have seen it, the city of Monona was pleased to accept an award last week on the 13th from the Clean Lakes Alliance for San Damiano as Urban Project of the Year, recognizing that it could have been privately developed and put into private hands. But instead, we saved it and we're committed to it being a public asset for everybody to enjoy. They also acknowledged its value as it relates to stormwater in Lake Monona. Obviously, it's huge, and it will only be bigger because it's likely the catch basin that's just to the north of San Damiano will be enlarged to accommodate what is a ridiculously big outflow coming out of that neighborhood, Madison neighborhood across the street. It's just it's a really big area there. Second, we are days away from the launch of the San Damiano website, which, like everything else, San Damiano has been a labor of love for me, in this case since early December. I wrote the copy, did the website architecture, have been selecting photos, but like everything else as well, it takes a village. So I wanted to give a shout out to some other people that have been intimately involved in that tonight. One is I wanted to give a big thanks to Monona resident Dan Costello and his company Cumium, who selected San Damiano as their Hack and Kindness project for the year. It's their nonprofit arm, and they're the ones that have been generously doing the web development, and will host the site and continue to work with us as it continues to grow. Second, I wanted to thank Monona resident Greg Bleck for all of his fantastic photography. He's been on the site a lot taking photos. Huge thanks to our community media rock stars, Will and Samantha, and Friends of San Damiano board member Pat Howell for capturing extraordinary video of a host of Monona folks, and what, not just Monona folks, but because it also includes folks like Bill Quackenbush from the Ho Chunk, and what makes San Damiano so special. The video is so special, in fact, that when I saw the first video, I just sat here at my desk and sobbed. So that's how much it moved me. It's really great. I can't wait for people to see it. And community media also knocks it out of the park by doing some fantastic drone work over the property. And finally, Alder Groupie jumped in as copy editor as well. So like I said, it's a long-term project. There is an estimated timeline on the website. And you'll see, as the mayor indicated, we expect master planning will take at least a year. And the project itself, by the time we raise all the money to not only create the master plan, purchase master plan, and then do the implementation of that master plan, the timeline goes to 2025. So it could be longer, even, but it is a long-term project. But again, to reiterate what the mayor said, the master planning process will be very much all about community engagement, and we look forward to it. There is the partnership between the city and the Friends of San Damiano will be formalized into an MOU that we expect to have in front of the council next month. And it basically breaks down to the city's going to be focusing on public funds, and San Damiano and Friends of San Damiano is beating the bushes for private philanthropy. But again, the city will always own the project, or own the property. So the Friends of San Damiano are still setting a specific goal, but for the first capital campaign, which is to say purchase money plus the money for the master planning, they're looking at a goal of upwards of $1 million that they've committed to as a group. And like I said, that's only capital campaign number 1 to get us through master planning. And then there'll be a campaign after that, obviously, around implementation. So a ton of work has been done, creating the foundation, raising money, and laying the groundwork for everything else that needs to be done, all the pieces that need to be put together. And I hope, and the website will constantly be changing because it will be picking up speed pretty rapidly here now that we've got the groundwork laid. Look for the website. Hopefully sometime this week we'll go live with it. We know we're really, really, really close.
This is actually a Friends of San Damiano website, correct?
This is actually a San Damiano website. It's not a friend site. It's actually the way the architecture works is it's a San Damiano website that has that definitely has the friends on it, and but it describes the property and then it describes the project. And we decided that it should be a San Damiano because it is a joint effort of the city and the Friends. So it's not just Friends specific.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank Alder Moore. She has, I mean, she really should just take up residence there. Has spent so much time there over the past year. It's just has put an amazing amount of time into this. And I think it's, when you see the website, you'll appreciate that. So, so those are, I don't know if anybody had any questions about any of that. Otherwise, we'll move on to reports from everybody else. Okay, Alder Wood.
Just wanted to report last week at Parks Board, we had a presentation that was really pretty amazing from primarily three sixth grade students supporting their idea for a mountain bike path or a mountain bike path or some of the other tracks that might go with that. Presented that at the Parks Board and really then also went out and got a lot of their friends to be in attendance. It was really pretty cool. So, and that's it.
Alder Thomas.
There's a zoning board meeting this week on Thursday night at 5:30.
Alder Groupie.
I don't have a report. I second Alder Wood's emotions about the great presentation about the mountain bike training area and trails. I thought it might be wise or important for either you, Mayor, or Brian to share about the new entry system at City Hall, just so that the public is aware that that has changed.
Right. I think maybe Brian will talk
Already
about
planning.
that.
Okay.
Good point. Alder, go forth.
At Landmarks, I misspoke at my last report. I said that the RFP was out for the pagoda repair. It is so close. I think the National Register process kind of took over. So it's right there ready. We might have to add one little piece for the some of the foundational work. So that will be going out very soon. And then I don't mean to misstep Alder Groupie, but I just did want to mention at Transit this week, we started the process on developing the new RFP for the transit service. And it's just such a fun committee to be on. And I just wanted to share that we're working on that.
That's always an involved process. So, yeah. Alder Coor.
Report.
Alder Moore, did you have anything else?
Yeah, actually, I did. I just wanted to mention that last week we had a very well attended, engaging Plan Commission meeting. And I know that there's where the Plan Commission tabled the proposal that's currently in front of us for Shopco. And we'll be taking that up. We anticipate taking that up again on the 25th. And I just want to thank everyone who contributed their feedback and thank the Commission for all its deliberations over and questions, not only at the meeting, but over the last week.
Thank you. City Clerk Andrews.
I just want to announce that all voting for the February 16th election will happen at the community center. So everybody, please go there. We'll be doing, announcements and press release, et cetera, to get the word out to voters, and signage, of course. The good thing about Monona is anywhere from anywhere is 5 minutes. So even if you go to the wrong place, you can just go right to the right place. Thank you very much, Council, for that action tonight. Otherwise, we are just gearing up for our spring activities, including Board of Review dates. I did put those on the website just as a quick, these are the dates, here you go. And other activities that we deal with in the spring here. So tax season's almost over, yeehaw. And so we're chugging along here, and we're very, very, very busy, and it's great because, man, days go by fast. So thank you.
Thanks, Joan. Chief McMullen, did you have anything else to announce?
Real quick, I just wanted to say thank you, not just to the council, but we have a wonderful set of volunteers on the department. 37 of them is our current count. They contributed probably upwards of 5,000 hours of volunteer time last year on the fire department, which was fabulous. Chief Eckloff did a amazing job in keeping things going. And he's been an invaluable help to myself as well. A couple of things for the council to be aware of. I did submit a grant to Firehouse Subs for a lift system for Medic 60, which would reduce our back injuries considerably. Not that we have any, but we don't want to have any. That'll be no cost to the city should we get awarded. We should know by mid-February. I am working on a assistance to firefighters grant, which is a federal grant to be submitted by February 12th for new breathing apparatus for the department. We attempted that in 2018 and were declined. We're going to try again this year. That'll be a 5% match from the city should we get awarded, approximately about $12,000 out of a $250,000 grant should we get awarded that. The ice rescue equipment, we're going to be training on it on the lake every Tuesday in February. Everybody is welcome to come down. As I promised in my email, we will not throw anybody in the water unless you want to jump in the water. You'll also probably see several other departments there as well. I've invited Oregon Fire and EMS, McFarland Fire and EMS, Deerfield, Cottage Grove, Deer Grove, any of our surrounding neighbors, Maple Bluff, anybody that wants to come down and play and bring their ice rescue equipment will be out on the lake in February doing some joint training with everybody.
Where will you be? Will you be from some particular park, or where's the?
I am not sure. I am not sure yet. I will leave that up to the training division to figure out the best place and the safest place for us to go, so we don't all end up in the water. If you don't choose to come to the lake next Tuesday, we're going to have a familiarization drill with our staff at the fire station inside. If you'd like to be down where it's warm instead of out where it's cold, we're going to pull all the trucks out so we have social distancing capabilities and practice deploying the boat and getting in the suits. And I invite anybody to stop down and say hi to the firefighters. We should have 25 or 30 people there and start working our way out to the lake next month. Last thing I've got for you, I will share this via email to the council and to Brian and to Leah. I've got some annual numbers that came from the county. It gives you quite a bit of detail on what our EMS does on an annual basis, the type of calls we go on, the time of day, the day of the week. It's about 9 pages of information that I find incredibly interesting. So I want to share, and I hope you all find it equally as interesting. And the department head reports will probably change a little bit starting the next month or two to include some financial information on a monthly basis and some more of these numbers that I like to put into graphs and make colorful on the pages for everybody. My goal is, again, to be as transparent as possible on everything that we're doing. So response times, where we're going, how we're doing it, I'd like to share that with the council on a monthly basis. So I'm going to finish up by saying thank you to the council. You guys have been awesome for my first 4 months. And yes, I'm going to continue to smile coming into work every day. And I also want to thank Brian and Leah. They've been fantastic resources for me. So I think the city's lucky to have them. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jerry. And I just thank you again for taking care of collecting the food donations from the food barrels. And just to announce, yesterday, Jerry picked up all the barrels at the commercial sites, but we are leaving them at the library and City Hall, at least for the next couple of weeks. We've had, I think the library in particular, we've had a lot of people. They bring it out every day when they bring out their tables for book pickup, and it's worked out really nice.
And what are we at for pounds now, Jerry? You know?
As of today, between myself and Mr. Benzine at St. Stephen's, we're estimating 1,500 pounds of food gathered so far.
Just great. And plus there's the donation that W. Davies made. They brought a truckload themselves directly to St. Stephen's. So Alder Thomas?
Well, 2 things. I was going to say, plus there are many people I know who wrote checks.
True.
Rather than drop food off. So that's not, because there are things that they can buy. And the other thing is, I was going to say to the chief, and you may be smiling, but we're smiling right back at you because you're coming in. And we're so happy to have you.
Yeah. You go, Jerry.
I appreciate you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Will, did you have anything?
He did not. He doesn't have a mic on his thing. He He does not. He doesn't have anything to report.
Okay, well then, Brian, you're the last and best.
Yeah, so there was a question about the lobby doors and the locking system. So City Hall's doors have never had the capability to be locked before. And just, with everything going on in the last couple of years, it made sense for us to look into the possibility of being able to lock the doors when there's no one, when there's few staff members in the building in overnight hours, particularly when it's just a couple of folks in the PD that are in the building. So we were able to get some COVID-19 money to install some locking systems on the internal lobby doors. So the second set of doors, once you come into the main lobby, those doors have the ability to be locked through an electronic lock system. They will now be locked starting at 10 p.m. till 5 a.m. every day. And then once you get from the exterior doors into that kind of alcove area, there is an intercom on that set. So if somebody needs to access the building after hours, they can buzz the intercom and get somebody who still is in the building to let them in if need be. So this still is a way for people to get access to the PD, for example, but just for safety precautions, the doors can be locked. And then in addition, we also have the ability to lock the downstairs entrance into the fire department, kind of near where the fire truck bays are. That also was not lockable before, but now we have the capabilities to provide some extra security for the fire department there as well. So that isn't in place now and should be up and running here in the next day or so.
Both great additions, I think. Did you have anything else, Brian?
Just more of a long-term item for your radar. The Sustainability Committee and Brad are kind of working out the final details, but they are planning on doing an Earth Day event for April 24th, looking at doing an in-person recycling event, which is on a Saturday, working with a contractor that will be able to help residents recycle any number of different items, including styrofoam, some other things like that. So there will definitely be more information to follow on that, but just wanted to put a plug on your calendars for that as well.
Anybody have anything else? Okay, we have no appointments tonight, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye.